Dr. Laura Calloway sat in her dimly lit lab, eyes glued to the holographic display in front of her. The flickering images of alien symbols swirled around her, each one a fragment of a mystery that had consumed her life. A renowned aerospace engineer, Laura was humanity's foremost expert on the long-lost Orcs, an alien race that had once dominated galaxies before vanishing from history. She had dedicated the last decade to deciphering their technology artifacts scattered across Earth that were as alien to her as the stars themselves. Her obsession with the Orc had cost her much. She had lost friends, relationships, and even her connection to the world outside her lab. Most people saw Lara as a brilliant but tortured scientist. Few understood the relentless drive that kept her going. But despite her accomplishments, one question had haunted her every day. What happened to the Orcs? The answer, she believed, was out there, hidden in plain sight. There were clues beneath the waves, buried deep in the Earth's oceans. She had been chasing these clues for years, hoping to unlock the secrets of a race that had once known the cosmos like no other. But each new discovery seemed to lead to more questions. With no answers in sight. Today, however, something was different. Lara was standing on the edge of the cold, rocky cliffs of Iceland, looking out over the endless expanse of the sea. The winds howled as waves crashed violently against the shore. This was where it all began. A deep-sea excavation team had sent her an urgent message claiming they had found something big. It wasn't just another artifact or an ancient relic. It was something far more significant. Lara arrived at the site, her heart pounding in anticipation. As she descended into the dark depths of the ocean, the lights from the submersible illuminated a massive metallic shape resting at the ocean floor. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized what it was. An ancient starship, still remarkably intact, its smooth surface glinting under the submersible's lights. It was unlike anything humanity had ever built, far too advanced for anything known to Earth. Its design was elegant, yet cold, with sharp angles and a distinct alien language etched across the hull. But what truly caught Lara's attention was the condition of the ship. It had been abandoned, deliberately. The ship seemed waiting. The submersible crew was speechless. Lara ordered them to pull up the ship's scan data, her mind racing with possibilities. The readings were like nothing she'd ever seen. The ship was not just functional, it was alive. Some systems were still active, though in a dormant state. Lara couldn't believe it. It was clear the ship had been left here by the Orcs. But why? And more importantly, why on Earth? As she carefully examined the readings, a series of encrypted signals began to emerge. At first, it was just static. But then, amidst the noise, Lara thought she caught a pattern, an odd sequence of numbers and symbols. She initiated a decryption program, praying it would give her some answers. What appeared on the screen made her pulse race. Please, take it. We need it back. The message was chilling, simple, and clear. It was a plea, not a warning. Whoever had left this ship behind was desperate, and they were asking for humanity's help. But who would leave a starship and then beg for it to be returned? Lara's mind whirled with questions. She had always believed the Orcs to be a race of conquerors, cold and calculating, who had simply faded from history after their rise to power had ended. But now, as she stared at the encrypted message, it became clear that this was not the case. Whoever was on the other end of this transmission had to be in crisis. She stared at the words on the screen for a long time, trying to process the implications. There was something deeply wrong about this. The Orcs, once the masters of the galaxy, now begging for humanity's help. What had happened to them? Were they truly as powerful as she had once believed? Or was there something else at play? But then another signal came through, even more disturbing. It was like a direct communication, almost as if the ship itself was aware of her presence. The signals seemed to be aimed specifically at her, as if the ship knew exactly who she was and that she was the one who could help. Lara's fingers hovered over the controls, hesitating. The stakes of this discovery had escalated in ways she couldn't have imagined. If the Orcs were asking for help, it meant they were in danger. But what kind of danger? This wasn't just an opportunity for humanity to learn from the Orcs' technology, it was a chance to uncover a whole new chapter of galactic history. Or it could be a trap. Could the Exorc have been hiding something far darker beneath their facade of superiority? Was the ship really meant to be returned to them, or was it a weapon of unimaginable power that needed to be destroyed? Lara felt the weight of the decision bearing down on her. On one hand, there was the allure of unlocking a treasure trove of alien technology, a prize that could push humanity forward by centuries. On the other, there was the haunting uncertainty that the Exorc's plea was more than just a request for help, it was a warning. The realization hit her. The future of humanity might depend on the choice she made. She was forced into a moral dilemma, one she couldn't ignore. Should she help the Exorc and risk everything, or should she use this opportunity for humanity's gain, keeping the ship and its secrets for herself? Whatever she chose, her life and the fate of the galaxy would never be the same. Lara sat in the control room, staring at the holographic readouts that danced before her eyes. The Starship, once a distant mystery, was now the center of her world. She had worked tirelessly to decode its systems, uncovering new layers of alien technology with each passing hour. Every scan brought her closer to understanding the Exorc and perhaps the key to unlocking a greater future for humanity. But something wasn't right. A nagging feeling at the back of her mind told her that the answers she was seeking might not be the ones she wanted. It was then that the transmission came unexpected, cryptic, and unmistakably urgent. The voice on the other end of the signal was low, raspy, and filled with an unfamiliar desperation. Dr. Calloway, do not trust the ship. It is not a gift, but a curse. You must destroy it. Lara's fingers froze above the console. The voice continued, explaining that they were part of a group of Zork exiles who'd been overthrown by a younger, more aggressive faction. These exiles had once served the Exorc's leaders, but now, fearing the rise of the new faction, they had been forced into hiding. They spoke of a war that had been raging for centuries, but the Exorc were no longer the conquerors. Their empire had crumbled under the weight of its own ambition, and now their only hope lay in the very ship Lara had discovered. It is a time bomb, the voice continued, its tone now urgent. This ship is the last remnant of a power too dangerous for anyone to control. The faction that left it on Earth was on the brink of destruction. They left it here as a final act of defiance, knowing it would be used by the next race to claim dominion over the stars. If you activate it, humanity will not become its savior. You will be its next victim. Lara felt a cold chill creep down her spine. The ship, which had once seemed like a treasure trove of alien knowledge, was now revealed to be a weapon, one capable of annihilating entire civilizations. Her desire to unlock its secrets had led her into a trap. What had seemed like a monumental discovery was, in reality, a ticking time bomb. But could she trust these exiles? Were they simply trying to manipulate her, or was this a genuine plea for help? The voice of the exile, who identified himself as Arkle, was insistent. He warned her that the faction now in control of the Exorc's legacy would stop at nothing to use the ship for their own gain, including the complete destruction of humanity. His group had fought to stop the new Xork faction from taking over, but now the very technology Lara had been studying could be the key to humanity's doom. Lara was caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. For years, she had idolized the Exorc, viewing them as a once great race whose downfall had been a tragic loss for the galaxy. She had spent sleepless nights studying their technology, hoping to understand their brilliance. But now, as Arkle's words echoed in her mind, she felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. What if the Exorc were not the noble race she had imagined, but instead a mirror of humanity's darkest desires? Could she have been so wrong about everything she had believed? The exiles offered her a choice: help them destroy the ship before it could be fully reactivated, or allow the new Exorc faction to reclaim their power and unleash its devastating force upon Earth. Arkle's plea was sincere, but it was not without its own risks. If Lara chose to side with the exiles, there was no guarantee that the ship could be destroyed without causing irreversible damage. Yet, if she chose to align herself with the factions within the human government that were eager to harness the ship's power, she risked unleashing a war on a scale humanity could not comprehend. Lara's mind was torn. She had long held onto the belief that humanity was destined to rise above the mistakes of its predecessors, that they were the superior species, with the wisdom to wield the power of the stars responsibly. But now, she wasn't so sure. The human factions that clamored for the ship's control were not interested in peace or diplomacy. They were driven by ambition, by the desire to dominate. In their hands, the ship could become a tool of oppression, a weapon that would continue the cycle of violence and conquest that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. In the midst of this, Lara made a shocking discovery. The ship was not the creation of the Orc at all. At first, it seemed like a simple misunderstanding. But as she dug deeper into the ship's systems, Lara uncovered a revelation that would change everything she thought she knew. The Starship, in fact, belonged to a race far older and more mysterious than the Exorc the Recha. The Recha were a species that had seeded life across the galaxy, including humanity. Their presence had been whispered about in ancient texts and forgotten myths, but until now, no one had been able to verify their existence. The Exorc, in their quest for domination, had waged war on the Recha for centuries, believing them to be the only race capable of challenging their supremacy. What Lara had believed to be Exorc technology was, in reality, the remnants of a long-forgotten war, a war that the Recha had ultimately lost, but not without leaving behind the seeds of a new galactic order. This discovery shattered Lara's worldview. She had always seen humanity as the product of evolution, a species destined to carve its own path among the stars. But now, she realized that humanity may not be the architects of their own fate. Instead, they had been shaped by the Recha, manipulated from the very beginning. The Exorc, for all their might, had been mere pawns in a much larger game, and humanity had been unknowingly caught in the middle of it all. As she processed this new revelation, Lara was forced to confront a difficult question. If humanity's rise was not the result of its own merits, does it deserve to claim dominion over the galaxy? Was humanity truly superior, or were they just another tool in a larger cosmic chess game? Lara had always believed that her work would lead humanity to greatness, but now she wasn't so sure. The fate of the galaxy no longer seemed like a simple matter of choosing the right side. It was a matter of survival, and whether humanity could learn from the mistakes of the Exorc and the Recha before it was too late. The stakes had grown higher, and Lara knew she had no time to waste. The ship, with its alien technology and devastating power, was now a symbol of humanity's potential, but also its potential downfall. As she weighed the choices before her, she realized that the greatest challenge was not just what to do with the ship, but how humanity would choose to define itself in the face of this new and terrifying reality. Lara Calloway's world had shifted in ways she hadn't thought possible. What began as a mission to unravel the mysteries of an ancient alien starship had morphed into a battle between galactic forces, and humanity's place in it was more uncertain than ever. The choice she made to ally herself with the Exorc exiles, those who claimed to be the last remnants of a once great race, had seemed like the only logical option. The Exorc were desperate, their empire crumbling under the weight of their own brutality, and their enemies the Recha seemed even more dangerous. Yet, as she worked alongside the exiles, piecing together the fragments of an ancient galactic conflict, Lara's certainty began to unravel. The exiles had offered her a role in stopping the Exorc's remaining faction from activating the ship, a weapon that could wipe out civilizations. But the more she learned, the more she realized that the Recha were not simply lurking in the shadows. They were already embedded deep within human society. It started with subtle signs unnerving, almost unnoticed details that suggested the Recha had long since infiltrated humanity's political structures. Political leaders, once seen as staunchly anti-alien, were now advocating for alliances with extraterrestrial races. Military leaders whose interests had been focused on expansion suddenly changed their priorities. The public seemed unaware, but Lara could see the shifting tides. And the more she studied the ship, the more certain she became that it was not just a weapon, but the key to a much larger story. The ship, she realized, wasn't simply meant for destruction. It was the final piece in a peace treaty between the Exorc and the Recha, a treaty that, if activated, could unite both factions in a struggle against an even more insidious force, the Recha's expansionist ambitions. Lara had long thought of the Orcs as the villains in this galactic narrative, but now she wasn't so sure. The Recha, far older and more manipulative, had seeded countless civilizations across the galaxy, humanity included. Their influence had stretched beyond what anyone could have imagined. And now, they were preparing to wage war on the Uxork, not to conquer them, but to obliterate them completely. The Exorc, ruthless though they were, had only ever fought to survive, to protect what was left of their culture and their people. Lara's view of the galaxy had been shaken to its core. The struggle wasn't about domination, it was about balance. Humanity's role in this conflict. It wasn't to repeat the mistakes of the Exorc or the Recha. Humanity's place, she believed now, was to broker peace. But peace between whom? The two galactic empires were locked in an eternal struggle, each believing their vision of the galaxy was the only true one. Lara was faced with an impossible task. The Recha were powerful and manipulative, capable of influencing entire systems without anyone being the wiser. The Exorc, broken and divided, had lost their former glory, yet they still held fragments of an ancient wisdom, one that could bring peace. But how could she convince both sides to lay down their arms when the galaxy had known only war for millennia? Was peace truly even possible? It was in the midst of these complex revelations that Lara received a call that would shake her to the very core. Her mentor, Dr. Philip Arden, a high-ranking official in the human government, had been her guiding star in the field of aerospace engineering. He had supported her career from the very beginning, even when others doubted her obsession with alien technology. He had been a voice of reason, a friend she had trusted implicitly. But now, Lara's growing suspicions about the Recha had led her to one terrifying conclusion. Arden had been working with them all along. He was not just an advisor to humanity's government, he was a secret agent for the Recha, a high-ranking member of their faction embedded in Earth's leadership. Lara's heart sank as the truth unfolded before her. The mentor she'd revered was now the very person she would have to stop. The truth was too painful to bear. Philip Arden had known all along about the Recha's plans, about their slow, insidious infiltration of humanity. But he had never warned her. Worse, he had manipulated her, steering her toward the ship and its secrets, knowing full well that the ship's activation would give the Recha the edge they needed to push humanity into their control. Lara confronted him in a quiet, isolated part of the Exorc exile base. The room was cold and stark, the harsh lighting casting long shadows. Arden stood there, calm as ever, his eyes betraying nothing. "I knew you'd come to this," he said, his voice steady. "You think I've been deceiving you, but I've always been truthful. Humanity has to accept its place in the galaxy. Lara, the Recha are our future. They offer us the power to lead, to rule. You've always been too idealistic, too focused on what you want to believe. The galaxy is about power, and the sooner humanity realizes that, the better." Lara felt her stomach churn. She had always respected Arden, trusted him implicitly. But now, his words felt like poison. He wasn't just a mentor. He was a traitor, playing both sides, ensuring that the Recha's plans went off without a hitch. The confrontation escalated quickly. Arden's calm demeanor began to crack, and as Lara reached for the ship's activation console to prevent the Recha from claiming it, Arden lunged. In that moment, Lara realized the full extent of the betrayal. She had to act quickly. If the Recha got control of the ship, it would all be over. Humanity would be subjugated, and the Exorc's last chance for survival would be gone. A desperate struggle ensued, one that left Lara no choice but to make the hardest decision of her life. In an agonizing moment, she pressed a button on the console that triggered a security protocol, sealing Arden's fate. He was trapped in the very system he had tried to control, his treacherous intentions exposed. Lara stood over the console, her heart heavy with the weight of what she had done. She had lost a mentor, a friend, a piece of her past. The cost of preventing the Recha from taking control of the ship was higher than she'd ever anticipated. As the room filled with the cold hum of the ship's systems, locking into place, Lara realized that the peace she had hoped to broker might never come. She had stopped Arden, but the Recha were still out there, watching, waiting. And the Exorc, though wounded, were not without their own ambition. The galaxy was far more complex than she had ever imagined. It was a battleground between ancient races, and humanity's role was no longer just to survive. It was to navigate this chaos, to try and understand a peace that had always seemed impossible. And in that impossible peace, Lara knew that humanity's true test would begin. Lara stood at the helm of the alien starship, her fingers trembling as they hovered over the control panel. The vast and complex machinery hummed softly, like a living creature, as the final pieces of the peace treaty clicked into place. The Exorc and the Rachel had been locked in a millennia-long battle for dominance across the galaxy, each faction consumed by their own vision of power and survival. But Lara had done the unthinkable. She had brokered a ceasefire between the two ancient races, using the ship's advanced technology to force both sides into an uneasy truce. Her heart ached, not with victory but with the burden of the cost. This peace was fragile, a temporary pause in an eternal conflict. The Exorc and Risha were still too dangerous, too consumed by their ambitions to truly trust one another. And humanity had become a player in this galactic game, an unexpected wildcard caught in a struggle it could scarcely understand. The peace treaty, while historic, was a bitter pill to swallow. Lara had believed, when she first embarked on her journey, that humanity's role in the galaxy was to rise above the petty politics of other species. But now, standing on the threshold of this new era, she understood that her once clear vision of humanity's future had been replaced with something far more complex and unsettling. Humanity was now a force to be reckoned with, a power in the galaxy, with all the potential for both greatness and ruin. But at what cost? She had sacrificed relationships, friends, and her own ideals to secure this fragile truce. The ship that was once seen as humanity's greatest asset was now a symbol of the dangers of power, its potential to corrupt, to reshape civilizations in ways that no one could foresee. As Lara reflected on the gravity of her actions, she felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. She had fought for peace, but peace in a universe filled with conflicting ideologies and ruthless factions was an illusion. The Exorc and the Richa would never truly accept one another, and humanity had no place in a galaxy where the rules were always shifting, always changing. Would humanity rise above the temptations of power? Or would it become like the very species it had once sought to defeat? It was in these quiet moments of reflection that the final twist arrived. A signal came through the alien ship's communication systems, an encrypted message from the Rachel. Lara's breath caught in her throat as she read the message. It was not a declaration of peace or goodwill, but a chilling truth she had never expected. The peace is a lie. We never intended to maintain it. You, humanity, were always our pawns. You will play your part, but you will never control the galaxy. We will use you to destroy the Exorc, just as we have used others before. Your role is simple, to be our weapon. The words felt like a blow to Lara's chest. The Richa had never wanted peace. They had played everyone from the beginning, manipulating events to ensure humanity's involvement in their war. They had used the truce as a strategic move, drawing humanity into their fold, ensuring that Earth and its people would fight against the Exorc in their name, all the while pretending to seek peace. Lara staggered back, the implications of the message crashing over her like a tidal wave. She had thought she was ending the war, that she had somehow stopped the cycle of violence. But the truth was far darker. The Recha had never wanted peace with the Exorc. Their goal had always been domination. They had orchestrated the entire situation, manipulating Lara, the Exorc, and even humanity itself. The ship, the peace treaty, the alliances, everything had been part of a grander plan to secure the Risha's ultimate victory. Lara had been used as a pawn, unknowingly playing into their hands. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She had brokered peace, but at the expense of humanity's soul. Lara felt a profound emptiness. She had believed in the ideal of peace, in the idea that humanity could rise above the mistakes of other species. But now she knew the terrible truth. The Recha had used humanity's hope for a better future as a tool to further their own ambitions. They had manipulated her, guided her every step, making her believe that the future was in humanity's hands, when, in reality, They were simply preparing humanity to be the weapon that would tip the scales in the Reach's favor. In her heart, Laura felt a deep sense of loss, not just for the peace that could never be achieved, but for the future she had once believed in. She had fought for something better, something more, but in the end, she had become a pawn in a much larger game. And as the truth of the Reach's manipulation unfolded, Laura knew that the real battle for humanity's future was just beginning. The final question echoed in her mind, a question that seemed impossible to answer. Can humanity, in its hunger for progress and dominance, avoid becoming the very force they once fought against? Lara stood alone in the control room of the alien starship, staring out into the vast, star-filled expanse of space. The stars twinkled coldly, distant and indifferent, as if they were silent witnesses to the grand struggle unfolding below. She had succeeded in bringing peace, but at what cost? Was this really peace, or just another cycle of manipulation, one that humanity would now have to live through? As the message from the Reacha continued to echo in her mind, Laura felt the weight of the future pressing down on her. Humanity's place in the galaxy was no longer certain. The dream of a better future had been shattered, replaced with a harsh reality where the fight for survival was just beginning. And in the quiet of space, as the ship hummed softly around her, Lara knew one thing for sure. The true battle was not for power or dominance, but for the very soul of humanity. The story of humanity's rise, its fall, and its ultimate destiny was far from over. But in that moment, Lara Calloway knew that whatever came next, she would be a part of it, whether as a pawn, a player, or something else entirely. The choice would be humanity's, and the future was uncertain. The galaxy was vast, and its politics would continue to shift. But one thing was clear: humanity had been forever changed. And as she stared into the endless night of space, Lara couldn't help but wonder, could humanity rise above its own hunger for power? Or would it fall victim to the same destructive forces that had torn other civilizations apart? The answer was yet to come.